Welcome back to Warrington Basketball. Today we are joined by Tom Stansfield. How are you, Tom? You okay?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Yourself?
Yes, good. To introduce Tom, he has coached, obviously, in the northwest of the UK. He is now currently in Sweden. Coached France, Germany, everywhere and anywhere. Today is going to be another episode on player development and how we compare to, obviously, different countries. Fire away, Tom. Just sort of introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. So, obviously, Tom, get the first name out of the way. A lot of people will be watching this will probably have heard or know me from the Northwest region. I was involved quite heavily with the Aspire stuff and the regional teams up until 2018, 2019 with the 15s and 13s. Did some time as the chair for the Northwest as well. Was heavily involved with Manchester Magic and had a little brief spell for a season or two with Manchester Giants prior to that, in and around coaching in France. Spent the last season in the NBBL in Germany and then in the women's second Bundesliga. And now I find myself plying my trade over in Sweden in the Stockholm area while this Corona situation dies down.
Yeah.
It's kind of me in a nutshell, really.
Yeah, good. So yeah, like I was saying, we're sort of comparing the likes of the British or England basketball play development to overseas. We had Mike later on recently talking about how it compares with his experience over in the States. So if you can sort of tell us a bit about what you've seen over in the likes of France, Germany, Sweden, that sort of thing, then that would be interesting.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I've been quite privileged and fortunate and to fall into the places that I did in France in terms of the levels and the clubs I was with. So we had the district teams, which is like the equivalent of sort of your CVL stuff, where they play very local community type. Your furthest away game is sort of 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers away. Then you have your like regional stuff, and then your final, obviously, like your national pools. One immediate difference that I would say is the way that their coaching is structured.
Okay.
So I spent, I can't remember what day it was I went out there. Say it was a Monday. I went for a meeting on a Tuesday at the gym. Oversaw the club head coach dealing with the under 9s, under 11s, under 13 squads, and they were all doing essentially the same rinse and repeat. Dribble to half court, go to the basket, lay up, get your rebound, go the other way, left hand. And I thought, okay, maybe this is how they do it. Wasn't quite sure, didn't really speak the language. And then obviously after like passing more and more time there and speaking to different people and learning the language and learning things, it turns out that they have set courses and subjects that they need to be fulfilling in order to then progress as coaches. So, for example, the U11, you are instructed to teach a very specific set of actions and techniques, if you like, and then from then you go to the next tier and you add a little bit more to it, and then by the time they get to 17s and 20s, they're supposed to be well-rounded, and equally the coach has been through 4 stages of different levels of development, and they are then also to a sufficient standard, especially when it comes to like individual development and junior development. The level 3 over their equivalent begins to add in a lot more tactical stuff, whereas the level 1 and 2 are very much footwork, passing, how to score from inside with both hands, variety of finishing, like really basic stuff.
Yeah.
And then obviously as the levels go up, the more the sort of IQ expands. But back to the the lesson that I saw, they basically did this pretty much over 3 days a week for 3 months. Just lay up, dribble to half court, go back, lay up. And then after a while, it was like, okay, now we're going to throw reverse layups in. And by this point, I'm sort of going, oh, okay, so I don't think you could do this in England without having a few people getting mad at you. You'd have at least someone would question something.
Yeah.
And basically, it's well, this kid needs to be able to finish from 3 feet away with both hands to a good level before we're going to teach them how to shoot. Okay. So then they have, when they begin to teach the shooting, one of the first things they teach them is basically if they have, to their perception, like a meter of space, they shoot. Like, it doesn't matter. They just shoot.
Right.
Technique isn't really taught. It's sort of covered, with a basic, ideally you should put your hand like this, but if it doesn't work and it's not comfortable, then you just shoot how you want to shoot. And again, you will try and stick to principle of, if you have this much space, you can shoot. If not, then you find a different option. And it was very, very interesting to see, because yes, there is a sort of element of stubbornness in that, you won't go above and beyond or outside of it, but at the same time, they have a buy-in from their entire coaching network across their country, which speaks volumes, because that is something we definitely don't have in England. And I wouldn't say that we're the only place that doesn't have that buy-in, but we definitely don't have that buy-in. Do I wholeheartedly agree with it? Probably not, because I'd like to see a bit more of a variation of things that they could be doing.
Yeah.
Especially as we like to, everyone likes to bring the word fun into things.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like, from a coaching perspective, the French will also, if you don't adhere to these things, the French will suspend your license for a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can actually do yourself harm by not adhering to their policies and not following through with things. And there's other things involved in that. It's a bit of a broad statement, but they will suspend coaching licenses for a season, 2 seasons, without much thought about it. Typically, when you get to the higher levels, so I spent more of my time was with the senior side of things, but obviously being around the club, I got to see the junior stuff. So when you do your level 3 and 4 over there, once you pass the tests and you get the accreditation, you need to go to a venue that is predetermined, either during the winter or the summer. I think, is it the winter? It's definitely one in the summer, if not 2 in the summer, and there might be an additional one in the winter. But it's like a workshop thing.
Yeah.
And you need to be present at that and get signed off. So you have to bring your ID, bring your coaching stuff, and be in attendance at one of these basic workshops. And again, if you're not present at them and you don't have a sufficient reason, you'll get your license suspended and you won't be allowed to coach.
Wow.
And I've had chats with B about this stuff. And it's kind of, some people understand it and some are very against it. The first bit of fight or pushback I had against it was but we'll lose the coaches. And my argument was, no, you'd lose the coaches who aren't interested in anything but themselves.
Yeah.
You'd actually, we might lose coaches, but we'd only technically lose bad coaches, which I don't think is a problem.
No.
But again, that's, personal opinion. The problem with them is they have a product because they chose to build a product.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to compare the two, but at the same time, pretty much everything they have that makes them successful, we have in the UK.
Yeah.
But it would just need people to come together and very much I always say, so when I'm talking about this with people in our like other group chats and coaching stuff, Basketball England would need to be more like North Korea and just say, this is what we're going to do. You're going to do this, and that is it. Like, no questions. So, for example, they have the INSEP program in France, which is like the National Institute of Sports and Education, for their aspiring athletes.
Yeah.
On the basketball side of it, they will do national tryouts in different regions just based on the purely the size of France, where they look at like their upcoming talent for, I think it's 15 to 19 years old or 16 to 19. And then they then select, after 2 weeks of testing, they'll select, like 20 players, I think it is, for both boys and girls.
Yeah.
And then they are all sent to Paris to the INSEP, where they live, eat, sleep, train, do everything, get education, along with the same from the football, from tennis. Last time I checked, I'm sure they list something like 90 sports that they have held at this institute. It's an unbelievable thing. Like, it's got its own Instagram page, and wow. Like every different day they're putting, this week they're going to focus on archery, and you get to see an inside of some arch that they've got, and the place is incredible. But we, in theory, if we wanted to duplicate that for the basketball, you would only need a space where they can do the education and the basketball side of things. Although they do use swimming quite a lot in France as like a cardio thing.
Yeah.
Especially for the basketball side of stuff. So one of the kids that I coached, Margot, she was 13. I had a 13 through 15. And then she's now in like the tier below the INSEP program. So she's on like the national radar.
Yeah.
I think she swims 4 times a week, 3 or 4 times a week. Early morning swim is what she does, like before school.
Wow.
So yeah, they're serious about it. It's intense, but at the same time, they're going, well, this is kind of what you committed to and what you wanted to be. So we're going to push you to get there.
Yeah.
But in terms of like doing that and rolling it out in the UK, you would essentially just need to pick an academy and go, right, this academy now, we're sending all our best players there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't need to tell you why that would cause a problem instantly, because it would be the national argument of, well, we're a better academy than you.
Yeah.
And, you're going to have coaches dick measuring instantly. Well, I've done this and I'm better than you, so why should you get the national talent? And that is where, B would need to come in and go, okay, this is who's taking it.
Yeah.
And this, not even necessarily this is why they're taking it, but maybe a why this is why they're taking it. Then the other thing they do is they stick the INSEP teams in National 1 of the men and National 2 of the women. So if you have a look on the FFBB listings, you'll see a team acronym the CFB or CFBB, which is the Central Federation, which is basically the INSEP players. So they will play against professional men's and women's teams for 2-3 seasons. And they were originally on the girls' side, they were NF3, but they won and ended up putting themselves in a spot for like promotion, but the rules state that they're not eligible for promotion or relegation. So what the FFBB did was go, okay, you're obviously better than this level, so we're going to move you up, but you can't win it. So if they finish first, the team in second finishes first.
Why would that matter? Why would they do that?
Because it's their way of putting these kids out against far superior talent to get them ready. And obviously, if you've got kids, to use Manchester, for example, if you've got under 16s, under 18s playing Division 1 or Division 2 men's basketball, They might well be the dog's bollocks at junior basketball, but the difference in just physicality alone in the men's game completely diminishes their ability as basketball players. And then after a year or two of playing at it, they then, they go back and play against the counterpart in under 16, and they're 3 times as strong as they were. They're quicker. They're not getting battered around the rim as much. And so what you find is, when did I last look at this? It might have been 2 years ago. It could have been 3. But that team then, on the boys' side, I think they finished with something like a minus 2,000 point differential in the league, which is terrible by anyone's standards other than theirs, because they then went on and played, I'm sure they played Junior Euro League as well, and they ended up knocking off someone like Barcelona in the finals or semi-finals. So you had, and I remember because there was this massive uproar saying that it's basically like it's a disgrace. It's a waste of everyone's time. We've got professional clubs playing against kids and absolutely whacking them by 50 points week in, week out. But then the kids then go and do this in their respective age group and tournament. And then the whole country goes, oh shit, actually, we've got some really good under 18 players or under 19 players. So it has its benefits, and it did the same thing with the football, which is where they stole the idea. They copied the idea from. And I think, without looking it up, it was like the late 90s, early thousands. It was around the time when France won the World Cup that was in Paris in France even, which was it 98 or 04?
98, I think it was.
98.
That's 98.
So around that time, they then said, right, we can do it with football. Why can't we do it with every other sport?
Sports.
So they then, looked at how they could roll out the same thing for the other sports, which is basically what the INSEP does. And they went from being, I want to say 25th and 26th in the world rankings according to FIBA. Oh, my line. Oh, sorry. Come back. Okay. They went from being something like 25th and 26th in the men's and women's FIBA world rankings, and then within, they've been 18 years? No, can't have been. 20 years? 20 years, they were, I think, as high as second or third in the men's, and again, as high as second or third in the women's rankings. So, you can't compare yourself to USA because it's just, we don't create those athletes.
No.
And, it's very naive to even consider, and I've heard a lot of arguments about, we should compare ourselves to USA, and, there's no comparison right now. We breed one kid that's 6'6" at 15, and we call it a miracle. You can find 10,000 of them in every county across the whole country. Yeah. And it's just not what we do. But the problem is there's some that can accept that, and then there's others that simply just cling on to it and hope that if we keep asking for it, we'll get it. Whereas what I've found, or what I believe I've found, is all these other countries are just going, well, this is what we have. This is what we kind of create. So let's build a program that's tailored to that, rather than trying to make our kids fit the USA mold. Yeah. And, if you look at like the regional stuff and the national stuff, I think the national has changed slightly, but it's very much, copy and paste from Team USA's junior book. And this is how we define the English playing style. Yeah. And it's like, well, we're not quick enough to play full court press at European level. We're not good enough, and we're not quick enough. And that's okay, because there's other things we can do and utilize to make us more competitive. But trying to get us to play 5-on-5 full court against Poland or Serbia or Spain, no chance. And it's like you can keep trying to do it and keep failing, or we can go, you know what, this doesn't work as well as we want it to, so why don't we just change it? And everyone else is seeming to find ways to adapt to what they make.
Yeah.
And then everyone's praising them for it, but then we just go, no, we want more of the same, which for our players doesn't seem to work. And you can throw in the arguments of like contact time, and the kids are doing 3 or 4 national camps a year, and that's it. And others are getting a lot more time. If you look in the national stuff in France, for example, just because we're talking about the French thing, if you go through their national team players list, like their rosters on a junior side, they will list where they play. So you'll see most of the time on a 12-man roster, probably 8 or 9 of them will have CFBB next to their name.
Right.
And then what you'll get is exceptions like Theo Maledon, who has been playing in a Jeep Elite since he was about 14 and makes a substantial amount of money to play in France's highest tier of men's basketball. So doesn't actually need to be involved in the INSEP because, he's good enough to be getting a full-time professional contract already.
Yeah.
And then you have Killian Hayes is another one. Although I'm pretty sure he went States. But then, for the most part, what you'll have is 9 or 10 of them will be listed as CFBB. And then the rest of them will be made up of players that are in either full-fledged professional contracts or in like well-esteemed Pôle Espoirs, as they're called over there, which is like their like aspiring pathway.
Yeah.
That a lot of their pro clubs have. And it's very much, it's a different style of basketball. There's way more outside shooting. Well, I think that's going to change with the way that British basketball is anyway, but it's a very different approach to the British game. A lot more freedom, which I think also comes from the coaching stuff. And, you don't need to look too far to find a kid that gets benched for shooting and missing in the UK. Because, one coach saw it and thought it was a good idea and everyone else replicated it. So now whenever a kid shoots, they go, what are you doing? Sit on the bench. You're like, all right, well, if you wonder why in 5 years' time that kid doesn't want to touch a basketball, don't really be surprised. But yeah, so the things are there. They could turn around tonight and say, okay, as of tomorrow, this list of players will be invited to go and move up sticks and move to this academy and compete there. And what we'll do is we'll name this team the British Central Federation team, and they will compete in NBL 1. They can't win it. We'll enter them in the BBL trophy, like the Wales national team have done. And they can get beat up. They can maybe cause a shock here and there. But in 5 or 10 years' time, what you'd have is a whole bunch of a lot better players and a lot more ready players. Because the other thing we have is we create these players and we create this talent, and then when it comes to everything outside of basketball, they're just not ready for it. They're not ready for life that we're trying to instill in all these kids. Oh, you want this NCAA life, you want this American dream, and then we send them there, and they've got no understanding of what they're walking into. Yet they're coming fresh out of academies that are apparently trying to replicate the American system. And, there's a massive sort of life lesson or life teaching that's being missed that ultimately then hampers their basketball. And we don't have a product to rival the NCAA. And we equally aren't creating... We create it, but we create in very small batch players that are ready to just make the jump into the pro realms at 16, 17.
Yeah.
We do make them. They are very rare. but it's not like we don't make them, but we don't make them enough. And again, we don't have a product that's here that is enticing enough to make players stick around for the whole journey in the UK.
Yeah.
And I think I'd give full props to places like, take Newcastle, for example. You know, they've got a very firm grip on the BBL at the top end, and they've also got a monumental, like, what do you call it? Like a come and try thing and a get into basketball, like getting people through the doors and showing them what a basketball is. And I think, you know, I have a lot of chats with different coaches from around the UK and a lot of group chats, and it's Newcastle is one we speak about quite a lot. And I've put my hat on and said that, you know, give it 10 or 12 years, and I think they're going to be one of the driving forces in the UK in terms of when you want this pathway from absolute beginner to the top level and everything in between, they're going to have it. And you're starting to see glimpses of it with their junior stuff. And I think just to basically give them some more time, and they're going to be bringing in national titles at junior level across the board, or doing a very good job of getting there and being very close to it year in, year out. But I think there's other clubs that they're just not so interested in doing the hard work at the beginning stuff. They want the middle ground and the upper ground and just sort of take the easy route with it.
Yeah.
You know, there's academies that do it, and I'm trying not to name drop and shit on people. But, you know, there is a lot of, well, we'll just jump in after you've spent 10 years developing the kid, and then we'll take him and we'll, you know, claim that the reason we're successful or this kid's successful is because of what we've done. And
yeah,
there's too much of that, and there's not enough like give back to, well, actually, this is where we came from. This is how we got this kid. But that kind of feeds back to the culture that we have in the sport, which is everyone is just out to shit on each other. And if one thing Corona has showed me, it's that I thought it was bad, and it's worse than I thought it was. And there's all this like fake, you know, let's all be nice to each other on social media, and literally come off one channel and go on to another channel and slate the same person that we've just been pretending to be best friends with. And it's like everyone talks about like sharing the game and sharing knowledge and helping each other, but the reality is like there's so many people that just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And like, to speak about the player development, and it's one thing we've been speaking about a lot recently, is like, what do you define as winning? Like, you guys have you're involved with Shoebrook, and like, you guys are creating a culture. And I was having this like conversation with him about this. Like, what do you define as winning? Because you can only win so much and go so far with what product you're offering. So where do you draw the line? If your ultimate measure of success is, you know, the kids need to win their like CVL league, what about everything before that? Because only one team's winning it. And that, you know, I'll have this argument with like the national stuff. I've won national titles. I've won regional titles. I've won regional titles in 2 other countries. If you only measure it on that, we're kind of screwed. Like, before we even start, we're screwed, because it's just it's a really poor thing to use as a standard.
Yeah.
And there's far too many people that are so consumed in the physical win being their measure of like a victory, and not the kid that messages you in 10 years time going, "Hey coach, just wanted to say, you know, thank you for everything you did. I'm now at this place. I'm, you know, wife, kids, whatever." That's a win. You know, if you got this relationship that lasts 20 years with a player, that's a win. I'm still yet to find a league anywhere like a junior league where, you know, you are financially compensated for winning. You know, you win a title, what do you win? If you go out and party, you win a hangover the next day, but the club ain't paying for it for you. You know, the parents might buy you a case of beer. That case of beer is your win, but it's not really a win. It's kind of, it's a thank you, and the thank you is what is way more important. But you see it all through junior basketball. You know, there's a team who are mid-table who have 12 players in kit, and only 7 of them touch the floor for 39.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And you go, well, I would question what this coach is doing, or whether I even want to, you know, put myself on the same par as that person and refer to them as a coach, because for me, that's not coaching.
No.
That's you trying to treat your own ego, and at the cost of kids. And there is a lot of that within the sport. And again, that needs to be dictated to by the governing body, and equally the clubs have got to get buy-in from it. I think there's a lot of clubs where one coach is doing one thing and has one ideology, and the club next to the coach next to them in terms of either age group up or age group below, who is either taking from or feeding to, is doing completely different, and nothing is aligned, nothing symmetrical. And yet, if you ask them what they want, they'll go, "Oh, best for the player." And you're like, "Well, is best for the player, you know, 14-year-olds running pick and roll situations and running these mad horns flex offenses and looking at, you know, can we replicate the Golden State Warriors playbook because it looks nice when you've got 5 millionaires doing it?" Probably not the best idea. But I think that we don't create the coaches, and we definitely don't nurture the coaches. Yeah, which is one thing that I've found is very difficult. It gets easier as you get more experienced, and you get to reflect on it in hindsight, and you know, you can sit and say, "Well, actually, I didn't get much." But at the same time, like, someone has to hold their hands up and say, "You know what, I'm going to take accountability now." And I was listening to one podcast the other week, and they were talking about, you know, maybe, you know, we should reach out to these coaches who were essentially on the same level as them and offer some sort of guidance. And it was like, well, at what point did you decide that just because you have like national coach as your title, that you're superior to someone who doesn't have a national coach? Because I can promise you, right, you're in MMA, right? Yeah. Now, this is a bit biased because I've dabbled with MMA and boxing, but I can promise you that I would like to think I know more about basketball than you, but I would guarantee that you know more about the fight world than I do. But I could equally guarantee that there's something I could learn from you that I can take from your background and put into my background and put into what I do. Yeah, of course, yeah. And I think there's this element of, well, why should I talk to you? You know, why should we have this phone call today? Because I'm a better basketball coach than you. It should, you know, this is like, it should just be people on my level that I'm reaching out to, is kind of the vibe I get off a lot of coaches from the UK. Yeah. And I think that I don't know whether it's front, whether it's, you know, we're all trying to build this name for ourselves for one day this big takeover is going to happen. It's going to be a case of, well, you know, who is the absolute alpha male in the basketball coaching world? But I think it hampers everybody, you know, and there's no cohesion between the clubs and the governing body for a start. You know, that's evident every single day on things, you know, every platform on social media. You don't have to look too hard to find a post of someone not being happy with something. And that'd be fine, you know, if it was like small doses. You cannot please everybody at every level of this game and every club. Like, you can't please everybody. But it just needs someone to come out and to put, you know, like rules in place and like a groundwork of foundations, and not every 2 years, let's release some sort of press release where we go, okay, this is the next 10-year plan that looks identical to the last 10-year plan. And everyone just goes, yeah, heard it all before, load of bollocks. We're not going to get anything from it. There's coaches that would reach out to me when I was a regional chair and be like, when's the next seminar? When's the next this? When's the next that? And I'm like, I've got a reply to you telling you basically you've got no chance, but how do I do that while saving my own face?
Yeah.
And I'm not the one responsible for it. I'd love to put coaching clinics on for you. I'd love for you to be like, every month, here's a seminar that you can drop into. And we tried it in Manchester. We tried this like coaching thing where, we got the boardroom for a couple of hours on a Friday night and people would come in from across the region. And we just spitball ideas, kind of like what is going on now with Corona on Zoom, but just in a board meeting, like face to face.
Yeah.
And it was really good. But at the same time, you had people who would never come, but yet would be on social media. Or it's just a recruitment tool for magic people. Because we were magic coach. Well, 3 of us were magic coaches, and it was held in the boardroom at Manchester.
Yeah.
But with respect to a lot of the clubs, they don't have that facility. You don't have the ability to just give us a boardroom for free to use for 3 hours if we want it, or the whole day if need be.
Yeah.
So it makes sense for us to hold it there. And there was no, we're not trying to recruit your coaches. We're actually trying to get better as a region. And in turn, if that then like has an imprint on other regions and they want to copy it, or even like communities, then great. And if they want to come and get involved with it as well, then by all means, like go for it. And we were at a point where we were going to get some of the kids, like local kids, to come in and basically be like guinea pigs. And we were sort of going to go and tap up the local central venue leagues and be like, do you want to come in and look at some like higher level coaching than what you're used to?
Yeah.
But equally stuff that you can take back, because I went to, I started at Reddish, where a lot of kids do, no different than Warrington, other than the location. And I'd go back there from time to time. Obviously, as the years passed, I spent less and less time in there. But I'd go back, and you still see, there's people in there who are very, very involved, and they're trying to be coaches. Now, from a coaching perspective, they might be doing absolutely terrible, but they don't know any better.
Yeah.
But the problem we have is we see that person in the UK especially, and we just go, shit coach, won't waste my time on him. When actually, what you could have just wasted is this guy could be a sponge who wants to follow his kids everywhere, wants to follow his daughter or son's classmates everywhere, and wants to get involved. And just because we go, oh, well, actually, this is a soccer dad who has turned up here on a Saturday morning just to help out because he's the only one sort of brave enough to do it.
Yeah.
We're just going to label him as a shit coach. He's probably not even got a coaching license. And he's doing nothing other than what most coaches do when they first start out, which is just go with what you know. What did you get taught originally? How were you treated by your PE teacher, by your football coach? And treat the kids the same way. I could come to you, again, slightly different with the MMA stuff. I could probably talk something that made sense to you for a little bit. And then there'd be a wall where I go, I've hit my limit now. And now I'm just talking nonsense. These are no different. They're going to say things like, just try and aim the ball at the big red thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the next step is to try and get him to elaborate on that. And, maybe talk about position of the feet, the hands, the release, the alignment of like the body, the shoulder and hip, all that stuff. But if you're not willing to put the time in with him, don't expect him to get any better.
Yeah.
And, the other problem we've got is everyone is after money. No one wants to share knowledge or do things without being paid for it, or it's a bad thing. But and I get it, I understand it, and it's nice to get paid for what you do, but the nature of this sport in this country is you don't get paid for it.
Yeah.
And there are very few people that do.
Yeah.
So if you are as if you're what you say you are, which is, we want the best for the kids and we want the best for the sport and the best for this, then the best thing you can do is go and help that guy, because you never know. It might be one of the best friendships you then look back on in 10 years and go that you've created. Or it might be the fact that he then comes to you as a sponge every week or every month, and you actually find yourself getting better because you're being challenged by someone, and you're then in a responsible position where you've got to help someone grow and develop, which you would never normally be afforded to do without going out and purposely looking for that kind of role in this country. There is no real, coaching mentor in the UK. I think Brian Aldred is listed as the guy. And, no disrespect to him, but if you were to survey the entire country of coaches, I'd guarantee about 99.9% of all would say, well, we'd like more. And that's fine. But yeah, so you have to have, just to go back to the original topic of, what are we defining as player development? I think it could do with being outlined by both the governing body, by the clubs individually, which would then need dictating to the coaches. And then you need the buy-in. And the thing is, it's like, say I come to you, and let's imagine that Shoebrook's in the same meeting with us, and I'm a new coach, and maybe I'm just me, and I just turn up and I'm like, I want to coach here. And you go, well, this is what we want. And I say, no, I'm not bothering. I don't want that. I want to do this. And you say, all right, cool, we'll get out then. See you later. I've got a choice to make then. I can either jump on board with you and do as you wish, or I can leave and go and try and find somewhere else where I can just like come in and have my own way. But if I leave, you're probably better off. And if I stay and go by what you're saying, you're also better off. And what would happen is if every club started doing this, then even the most reluctant of coaches would turn around and go, you know what, shit, I actually really want to coach. I'm going to have to bite the bullet. I'm going to have to do this. And the other thing with this is like junior coaching is hard. Like, don't get it twisted. I've coached at up to Division 1 men in the UK, 4th division in Germany last year. I'd love to say that I was in the Bundesliga team, but I know I was on the sidelines at practice a couple of times, but that was as close as I got to them. And then the top regional division in France, and they are so much easier to work with than juniors. You trying to explain the actual basics of the game to kids and to get them to take it in, that is hard. And you've got the whole, to use a bloody MMA pun, you got fight or flight. Do you want a challenge, or you're not bothering? Do you want the easy route where you just go and take a bunch of kids who are already developed, or developed in your opinion, and go and try and win by literally winning? Or do you go and take a bunch of kids who maybe never played before? And you'll learn about yourself a hell of a lot more with the kids who can't do it than the ones that can do it. If you're a half decent people's person, you can get pretty far with talent. Although you do need a bit of like nuance about you. But being a great people's person with a bunch of kids who never played before is not going to have the same output. And I mean, I used to be this guy, and I'll tell you what, there'll be people that are listening to this that just start laughing when I say this, because I used to be the guy that would do nothing but throw shit at BE and be like, oh, they're trash at this, they're trash at that. And then part of me grew up, part of me thought, why do I care so much about it? And then, I got a little bit older, got a bit wiser, and thought, you know what, actually, like, there are some people in there that genuinely are trying their best. And have the right intentions. The sport is marred by 30, 40, 50 years, whatever, of, for lack of a better word, just arseholes. who have been nothing but self-serving, and have essentially helped, if that's the right term, get the sport to where it is today.
Yeah.
And the people now are sort of paying for it. There's people in positions that are in there now that are getting shit for things that happened 10 years ago. And you're going, well, realistically, this guy wasn't even involved 5 years ago. So what happened 10 years ago has nothing to do with him. So it's a tough one. And everything is there for it to change. And there are people that want to change, but there needs to be this sort of clean break where people put their differences aside and are willing to change before anything is going to happen, before we see like a serious step forward.
Yeah.
It's all great. We look at the junior stuff and FIBA, and, this summer would have been good to look at, junior development at FIBA, but obviously, that's not happening. But we can't be content with getting promoted to Division A to then get dropped back down to Division B to then go back to Division A to drop to Division B. Like, we say we aim higher than that, but we don't really reflect that with what we do.
Yeah.
And there's nothing stopping us. And I am not going to sit on here and say we can win the under-16s European Championships or the under-18s, because we're not ready yet. We're not at that level. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. People will think that I have an issue with it, but I don't. To say we're going to suddenly churn out, players that can compete with Spain is ridiculous. But, we can definitely do better. And we would do better almost overnight with a few changes on the ground.
Yeah.
In terms of, people being more open, people willing to help others, taking a step back from me and looking more at, what I actually like, practice what you preach, where if you're saying that, you're in it for the best thing for the kid, then serve the kid, don't serve yourself.
Yeah.
Because the kid's going to come back and serve you eventually.
Yeah.
And, like you look at it with, take your pick. I have messages in my WhatsApp, my Facebook, my Instagram from players from the UK, from players from France, from players from Germany to this day who message, one of my kids from Bayreuth messages me like every week with videos of him on the park. And he's like, this is my workout from today. Here's some videos of me shooting threes. I hit like 11 in a row today. Or here's a dunk that I pulled off at the end of the session.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's what you want. My role for them was, with the U18 guys, was to get them to be taken off me by the pro team. Lose players was what I was told in my interview with them. You have to lose players. That's your role. Not win, lose players. And I thought, all right, this will be interesting. I lost 4 over the season.
Mm.
And, believe me, if I was to take 4 of your best players from you, how well is your team going to do in the league?
Yeah, exactly.
If we got whacked, you take my one of my best forwards who's taking like 25 a game, and you take him out of it. Well, I need a 25-point hole filling very quickly, and it doesn't get filled.
Yeah.
So, but if I was only about me and going, well, I want to win this game at weekend because that's what I want, not what is best for the club and the kids, then, we'd had a massive problem. But I think it helps to be put in those positions previously, because I know that my former younger self would have dealt very differently with that, and I wouldn't have liked it.
Yeah.
And again, this is a whole like personal reflection, and coming up to 30, I'm very different to what I was when I was 21 and fresh off a like horrific knee injury, and I was mad at the world and mad at everybody else, and I held everyone to this like stupidly high standard, and I actually needed to get into a spot where I was like a development coach. And it wasn't about winning, or it wasn't like results driven. It was more about like individual development was what the metric was.
Yeah.
And then, And I remember when I was at Magic with the 15s, and the 16s coaches messaging me, right, I need these 3 players at weekend, or I need these 3, and I'm like, you're trying to kill my team. Like, I need these kids to win. I need to win this game at weekend. And then after a while, I'm going, I don't need to fucking win. Like, I need all these kids to get better to then turn around to me at the end of the year and be like, oh, we like Tom. Tom's a good coach. Like, that's what I want. I want the appreciation and the respect of the players. Like, what other coaches think of me is irrelevant. And I know that because of what I've done and said when I was younger, I am well aware that I am prejudged on people's personal opinion of me and not my coaching abilities.
Yeah.
And, but I don't get anything from another coach messaging me saying, hey, good job today, coach. Like, great coach. I get it from the kid who pops up who I won the regionals with, or, I went in the trenches with for a full season or 2 seasons, who checked in with me 4 years later.
Yeah.
That's what you want.
Yeah.
And, your professional feedback or opinions are great. Well, you can choose to listen to them. You can choose to, ignore them, use them, empower you, break you, or however you want it to be. Like, that's ultimately our choice as individuals.
Yeah.
But, the kids aren't stupid. The kids know what they want.
Yeah.
We spend too much time claiming that we know what the kids want. And then you go to these conferences and they're like, yeah, everything's player-centric now. Everything's about the kid. And you go, well, I've been doing this for like 5 years, and all I've been told is how stupid I look when I coach, and, how I'm so different to you. And now you're telling me 5 years later that what I was doing 5 years ago was what you're doing now, and I need to copy you. It's a mad world that we live in, especially in the UK when it comes to basketball.
Yeah. Well, it's food for thought, mate. I think I agree with you, to be fair, in terms of there's obviously some big changes that we need. But yeah, it's not easy as just flicking a switch, is it? I suppose there's going to be a few things that would need to move, and then a lot of egos that would have to be. I'd have to agree with it. So
yeah, and I think if it'd be one of them where one club sort of buys into it, and the next thing everyone else is. That's how basketball works in the UK.
Yeah.
Is what with and I'm waiting because I don't know if you follow this like basketball immersion thing. With this Chris Oliver guy that has got he's captured a global coaching audience, and he has a great platform. And he had a guy on the other day, Darko Rajakovic, I think his name was, from Phoenix Suns and the Serbian national team.
Yeah, I've seen it, but I've not watched it.
It's probably my favourite one of all of them out of the 120 episodes, whatever he's done. But my fear is now, every time I go on social media, I'm just waiting for a bunch of people saying, oh, here's a new breakdown and videos of the Phoenix offense. And this is what we're going to run with our juniors next year. And you're like, just, you kids are not Phoenix Suns. You don't have Ricky Rubio running the point in your community team. As much as we all like to have it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But it's monkey see, monkey do. And, one person buys into it. Look at the Spanish pick and roll, for example. One person catches wind of it, the whole country ran it. Well, the whole world is running it. And now, we're seeing the same thing with like these little short pistol actions. And there's a few like corner reads from Euro leagues that are sort of making their way around.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's the same. One club is going to turn around and go, we are starting fresh with this new pathway for player development and coach development. And then every other club is just going to go, yep, we want some of this. We're going to do the same thing. But it's finding that club that goes, we're going to break away from the norm and put this in and stick to it.
Well, fingers crossed, we get something sooner rather than later that works out similar to it.
I believe it'll happen. Don't get me wrong. 10 years ago, I'd have told you very differently. But no, I believe that moving in the right way. It's just very slowly, and obviously everyone wants things to happen immediately, but it's not going to happen immediately. But I think it's coming.
Yeah.
And by all means, you know, when it does happen, I'll be the first to go. I embrace this, and fair play to you all. And
yeah, we appreciate it, Tom. Thank you for coming on. It's been
I appreciate having me.
a good chat. Again, like I say, it's a lot of food for thought, really.